everybody, it's Dakota, and today I'm going to be going over my first standard deck for Theros Beyond Death Standard, and it's going to be probably one that a lot of people would expect. This is a blue-green X ramp deck. This one, specifically the Sultai version of these ramp decks, because I think that the black splash is better than the white or red splash you could be using in these decks. So basically, what is the point of these ramp decks? Well, essentially, the kind of rule that goes with all of these is you're just trying to get to Nissa who shakes the world as fast as possible, whether that's playing cards like Growth Spiral, playing Paradise Druid. Death Sprout's an interesting one because you can destroy a creature and then search for a basic land that gets you up to 5 and then potentially 6 on the next turn. That can let you cast some 4 drops if you play a Nissa, and again, assuming that you untap a forest with Nissa. The payoffs and really what you kind of get rewarded for playing these ramp strategies is Hydroid Krasis, which is probably like the best creature in the standard format. Where famously you cast it, you draw half of X and you gain half X life, where X is rounded down, and then you get a X flyer or a flyer with X +1/+1 counters on it. Voracious Hydra doing kind of the same thing that Hydra Graces is, but instead of card advantage plus gaining you some life, he can either be super huge or just get rid of a problematic creature and also be really big. And that's a way that you can end the game. Notably, also has trample, so if you make him an 18-19, he's going to be very hard to block and very hard to deal with. Gadwick, while you're probably not going to be tapping down a lot of permanents, it's basically mini Hydroid Krasis, a little bit more efficient because obviously if you spend 4, you just draw 1 card, 5, 2, so on and so forth, and eventually it ends up drawing more cards than a Hydroid Krasis would, but obviously doesn't get nearly as big. So basically, that's like the idea of the deck is that you want to get this Nissa who shakes the world into play as fast as possible, and slam a Hydroid Krasis or a Voracious Hydra, and you can just easily win the game with one of these two. Obviously, Krasis being the better of the two because you get to draw cards and gain life and kill your opponent in 2 turns. Where if you can get Voracious Hydra even bigger than 20 power, generally that'll also be good enough to win the game. It'll be a little bit better than Hydroid Krasis because it can obviously win the game, but most of the time you're just looking to slam a Hydroid Krasis and tell your opponent to figure it out, and even when they figure it out, you've probably already drawn another answer. So some sweet cards like Tyrant Scorned is some early interaction, just getting rid of like your opponent's aggressive start and really just putting them behind and forcing them to have to deal with your bigger threats and beat through your bigger threats makes it really hard. While Ember Cleave is really good, and I'm a big fan of that card. Tyrant Scorn makes things really hard for the Ember Cleave players. Hydroid Crasises and big Voracious Hydras make life difficult for them. And also for good measure, like Death Sprout is just a really good removal spell that ramps you. Casualties of War destroys multiple things, like it can easily be a 5-for-1 with just this card. And usually if you can just 3-for-1 or 4-for-1 your opponent with this, you're doing really, really well for yourself. So the land base for this is pretty like self-explanatory, I would say. There's a lot of temples in the deck. There's 10 total temples. There's 11, 12, 13, 14, and if you include Fable Passages, 18 lands that aren't forests, but obviously, like, Fable Passage fetches up to 2 forests. The Overgrown Tomb and the Breeding Pools are considered forests, and that's important for Nissa who shakes the world because obviously the more forests you have, the more your lands will essentially tap for 2, and then the more you can get from the minus ability to give your lands indestructible and search out all those forest cards and put them into play. Temples can help you fix draws when you need them. Obviously, the green one's better than the Temple of Deceit, which is kind of surprising. There's 4 of these and not 4 of one of these and then 3 of these, but someone that built this deck that was smarter than me, definitely doing a good job. Over Tomb, Breeding Pool, Forest, like you're mainly green, green and blue, so playing the dual lands that are considered forest, pretty good. Forest, Island, 2 swamps in the deck because we have a decent amount of double black cards as well in the deck. Looking at the sideboard, Aether Gust really good at putting problematic green permanents, really does well against Nissa who shakes the world. does really well against opposing Hydroid Crasises and can even take care of an Ember Cleave. Noxious Grasp, another way of dealing with Nissas. Mystical Disputes for early interaction. Enter the God Eternals just to grind a little bit more. Ritual Soot takes care of conveniently all of these creatures that we just mentioned before. So in the mirror, this is really good, and also in the Mardu Knights, Black Red Knights, White Black Knights, any of the super aggressive decks like Ritual Soot just kind of cleans them all up. And that's my super quick overview of Sultai Ramp, what I think is probably one of the best standard decks to be playing in the format right now. If you're going to pick up standard, playing this deck on Arena, probably going to be pretty hard because it does use a lot of rare wild cards. You see 41 and 4 mythics. The uncommon and common and probably even the mythics aren't that hard, but the 41 rares is definitely a tall order, especially if you haven't been keeping up with standard. But if you're able and willing to put the money into Arena, or you already have these cards in paper, this deck is definitely worth playing, and I think is really, really powerful, and is probably just like the best tier 1 deck in the format to be playing. But that's going to do it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Consider subscribing to my channel. I do a lot more modern and pioneer, along with now doing standard as we get into a new format and we have new sweet decks coming out. There's one I have in mind that for next week for standard. So if you're into that, keep an eye out for that. Please consider subscribing to my channel to see more of that awesome stuff. I try to post Monday through Friday every day, or every week, excuse me. So that's always cool. And make sure to follow my Twitch channel as well, because I do a decent amount of streaming over there. Trying to do more than what we have been able to do, but sometimes life gets in the way, and that's kind of the crappy part of it. But yeah, that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.